I do think that these judges have been too clever for their own good by engaging in this kind of lawfare as opposed to political warfare, because these are matters, I'd speak in my view, that should be decided at the ballot box, not in court.
Sarah Baxter is director of the Marie Colvin Center for International Reporting. It's tempting to laugh, Sarah, isn't it? But it's just such a serious thing. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the Colorado Supreme Court's ruling will actually mean?
In the long run, I think it means absolutely nothing, because the decision will now go to a Supreme Court that has a very solid Conservative majority, including recent Donald Trump appointments to it. And it's inconceivable, in my view, that they would uphold this ruling by Colorado judges. All it's done, in my view, is given a rocket boost to the idea that the Democrats are engaged in trying to stop democracy, if you're a Republican who supports Donald Trump, just as Democrats are arguing that it is Donald Trump who's a threat to democracy. And I do think that these judges have been too clever for their own good by engaging in this kind of lawfare as opposed to political warfare, because these are matters, I'd speak in my view, that should be decided at the ballot box, not in court. After all, who's to stop judges deciding that somebody from the Democratic side isn't suitable to run either? So it is a very problematic decision, I think, that's going to have all kinds of ramifications. And we've already seen Donald Trump trying to use it to rally supporters to his own side.
But surely the logical point is that Colorado, as a state, doesn't want to have someone who they believe indulged in criminal activity standing as a legitimate politician within their state. And I mean, if you were to, if the crime was something else and it wasn't a political crime, you would completely understand that position, wouldn't you?
Well, I happen to feel that Donald Trump engaged in completely abhorrent and very potentially illegal behaviour on January the 6th, and also in the run-up to January 6th, with his whole crazy fake elector schemes, etc. He was clearly trying to hijack the election and keep himself in power. Now, that to me was very anti-democratic. But at the same time, he hasn't actually been found guilty of any crime yet. He's not been found guilty of insurrection. The Congress, the House of Representatives, impeached him shortly after that, in the January 6th riot, and the Senate declined to convict. So he wasn't convicted of anything. And there's a whole case going forward brought by the special counsel, Jack Smith, to look at the idea of whether or not Donald Trump interfered in the election process. So that's due for March.
Okay.
So he hasn't been found guilty, but Colorado judges have decided to convict him anyway.
What would happen, though, if any of the other... I mean, he's standing in 5 different criminal court cases at the moment, isn't he? What would happen if one of those other cases found him guilty of something?
Well, the Colorado judgment doesn't hinge on whether he's found guilty of anything. They've decided for themselves that January the 6th and his preparations behind the scenes for that riot and for stopping the certification of the election in Joe Biden's favour was tantamount to defying the Constitution. But even then, lawyers can dance on the head of the pin about whether or not the law as it stands, the famous 14th Amendment of the Constitution banning people who've partaken in an insurrection from standing for office, includes, believe it or not, the office of the president. A lot of people say, no, that only applies to people who swear an oath, as congressmen do, and not to the president himself. So there's endless legal debate, even about the niceties of that. And not every Democratic judge or anti-Trump Republican judge agrees with what these Colorado judges have done. And Colorado is a swing state, by the way. I mean, it's increasingly Democratic, but it's got quite a few conservative representatives as well. And they think this is going to give them a huge campaign boost.
If what the Colorado Supreme Court has decided today did stand, and I hear all of your points about the fact that it will be challenged, wouldn't it simply be part of the Constitution that you wouldn't be able to, in other states, potentially elect a president who had not been on a ballot paper in one state? Doesn't every state have to have the same people on the ballot papers?
That's my understanding, but honestly, I'm not a constitutional expert on that. It's just I would eat my hat. I might have to do a Paddy Ashdown and end up eating my hat, by the way, in which case I could have. But I'm going to use that phrase anyway. I'd eat my hat if the Supreme Court upheld this judgment. So all that it matters is that there are a number of, I think, reasonable prosecutions of Trump going ahead. One is, did he, secrete classified documents around Mar-a-Lago? Well, I think we've seen with our own eyes they were stuck behind the shower and God knows where. Did he try to interfere in the election? Well, that's going to be decided in court. I would say there's a good chance that he did, or whether or not a jury convicts, it remains to be seen. But there are some slightly spurious cases going on, such as the one about whether he's fit to run a company or not, that New York State State Attorney General has brought, and when he's been running a company for decades. And then there's this one by the Colorado judges, and it leaves you scratching your head, because the more there are foolish cases against him, the more the other ones just look like the general witch hunt, which of course he's been claiming for years.
Sarah, always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. That's Sarah Baxter, who's director of the Marie Colvin Center for International Reporting.